Hi everyone. Welcome you all to the first module of Cloud Series presentation. In this module, just I'm going to cover IT infrastructure part of a Primitive DC to set up a platform to understand cloud computing offerings by cloud data center providers. So the very reason why I'm starting with this Primitive data center presentation is so the cloud data center itself and transformation from legacy data center. So in this particular presentation, I'm going to cover the following topic, introduction to this presentation and audience for this presentation, core component of an IT infrastructure at the very high level, and features and solutions every organizations would require for their applications, and transition of an IT infrastructures over the decade, and all the services which is part of the IT life cycle. So as you are aware, the cloud computing itself a transformation from a legacy or a primitive data center to its present state over the decade. And the transformation has taken place in terms of so the way in which the IT infrastructure is designed and procured. So infrastructure is deployed, infrastructure is managed, and infrastructure is scaled, infrastructure is decommissioned. Also, so the way the cost model for IT equipments acquisition, also to operate IT equipments. So in all these areas which is mentioned in this bulleted points, so there is a transformation has taken place over the period. So for the scope of this particular presentation, I would be covering more from primitive infrastructure, so that going ahead when we start discussing on the cloud front, we would clearly see the differences in the transformation which has taken from the primitive data center IT infrastructure to so the cloud data center. So this particular slide represents three technology domain which is part of an IT infrastructure. Normally in an organizations, these three other technology domains were designed separately in the legacy data center era. For example, server infrastructure was the design by a platform architects, and networking layer was the design by network architects, and storage layer was the design by storage architects. The designation for the professional who did the architected, so these layers might vary from organization to organization, but at the nutshell, so in the legacy data center era, all these layers were the designed separately. And also, so on design, it's each and every product belong to those particular the layer were procured separately and implemented separately and provisioned separately and managed separately, and finally those all three layers were integrated into an IT infrastructure to host applications or to develop a new applications. Also, this particular slide represents a pre-virtualization era, wherein server infrastructure layer, just you can notice, there is an one-on-one mapping between operating system instance to underlying physical hardware. In this pre-virtualization era, there was a limitation of only one operating system instance that can run on underlying physical hardware. This limitation also impacted in terms of leveraging or utilizing underlying powerful hardware. So this slide represents the next big technology transformation which took place in the server layer is on virtualization, wherein actually hypervisor provided an ability to install multiple operating systems instances on a single physical hardware, where hypervisors created multiple virtual machines on top of a physical hardware, where each and every virtual machine can host operating systems. On top of it, anyway, just we can install application actually as required. This particular layer, this virtualization increased the efficiency of underlying physical hardware. Wherein in the last slide you did see each and every hardware had limitation of hosting only one operating systems. So that limitation was removed by use of hypervisor technology. So this is the big leap from in a data center technology in a server infrastructure layer. A similar technology transition has took place even in a storage and networking layer. To provide a context to what we have to learn forward, I think this is enough at this stage. So this particular slide lists a very important feature set which is applicable for all the technology domains, be it a server domain, networking domain, or a storage infrastructure. So normally when architects design a solution against those technology domains, they will accommodate these features as per application and the business requirement. Just to give a few examples against some of these feature sets, if I have to give example on security, just you can think of a firewall, antivirus, encryption. Encryption can be at a storage level or a network level. Uh, for availability, you can think of cluster software, which provides a failover of an application from a failed node to surviving node. When it comes to efficiency, one of the best example what we can provide is virtualization, which is a breakthrough technology to have a multiple instances of operating system installed on a single underlying hardware. When it comes to performance, it's about right sizing of hardware to meet the performance requirement. In a scalability, for example, in case if applications required more processing capability or more memory or more I/O, so in this case of legacy data center, so those capacities will be added in terms of one component. For example, process module can be added to system, memory modules and I/O modules can be added to the system. Scalability in primitive data center or a legacy data center is a scale-up model. So that does mean it's a vertical scaling, adding a component to a system. Integration is about just ensuring all components are interoperable, and so this will work the best actually when we are building infrastructure, IT infrastructure. So this slide covers some of the important solutions all of you have seen in a data center. Backup solutions, archival solutions, naming services such as DNS, and the directory services AD, and NIS in a Unix environment. Messaging services, mail, chat, and the distributed computing, which is the required for a batch processing of jobs, and so the big data, which is the latest technology in a data center. Even though there are many solutions which will be part of your data centers, just I would limit to these solutions just to certain platform. So over decades, we have been a witness of major transformation taking place in IT infrastructure side. And the major transformation has taken across all the technology domains. So we have seen a physical environment moving towards a virtualization environment, and now we are moving from a virtualization environment to the cloud environment, which is a data center supplied by the cloud vendors. So let us discuss these topics in detail in the later modules. As scope of this particular module is not covering these topics in detail. In a primitive data centers, most of the pre-sales or post-sales operations were happened in silos. Right from the design to procurement to in deployment or operational management or even the cost, everything happened at the silo level. In design phase, platform architects, storage architects, and network and security architects designed server infrastructure, storage infrastructure, and network and security infrastructure, respectively. At nutshell, all these three different technology domains were designed in silos. In a legacy data center era, even the procurement happened in silos. Servers were procured from server vendors. Storage was procured from the storage vendors, and network and security the products were procured from the respective vendor. So here even the procurement was completely happened in silos. So the legacy data center was it's an era of a silo deployment. So the post procurement, so each of the equipment which is purchased were deployed in silos. So the component against server infrastructures, those were deployed in silos. Storage infrastructure was deployed in silos. Network and security, so the implemented and configured in silos. So the monitoring was configured in silos, and same as it goes with the other software. So there was not a single tool to configure all these infrastructure pieces. First, one need to implement each and every infrastructure in silos and integrate all those pieces into an IT infrastructure. In a primitive data center, you got to see even operational silos. So there was a separate resources to manage server domain. There was separate resources to manage storage domain, and there was separate resources to manage network and security, and also the backup and restorations. Even the provision took place in silos. Even the maintenance, like in software updates or firmware updates or OS updates, so all these took place in silos. So there is not just one single tool to manage a server, a storage, network and security, and a backup domains. So at in the primitive, in one point we have to say it's more or less it's completely an operational silos. So when it comes to the resources, so there was a capex involved to acquire IT equipments, and to sustain there was an operational expenditure. When it comes to technical resources, as you have seen in the last slide, so there was a separate skill set, there was a separate resources to the maintain each and every technology domains. So at nutshell, to conclude this primitive data centers, it was the design silos and the procurement silos, the deployment silos, and the operational management was again it was in silos. So a primitive data center was a era of silo operations. Hope this module has helped you understand kind of challenges what we had in terms of design, procurement, deployment, and operational management, and the capex and the opex front. When we compare the same thing with respect to the cloud computing infrastructure at the later models, so that will set the clear understanding what really has transformed from a primitive infrastructure to the cloud infrastructure. Thank you. Thank you very much for watching this video.